can be absolutely devastating in a wet time. Similarly cold and hot. It's pretty expensive, out of the question. But I have been thinking for years and years about all this. We've got 450 acres of woods, all these acorns, and they don't get eaten. I mean, you know, the deer eat some, turkeys eat some, but they don't get eaten. They just rot. And I know that historically, the older neighbors tell me that in the 40s and 50s, before the government, bought the mountain, we're the only ones that didn't sell to them on principle. But before the government owned the mountain, the neighbors would get together and pick areas for managing. They would trade off from owners to owners. Hey, well, how about we come over to your place and burn 5 acres this year? And that's where everybody went and picked huckleberries for the next 2 years, because the huckleberries came in under the burned off area. And they would also cooperatively graze their hogs. Each of them had, say, 10 hogs. They put them all together in a group of 100, and they would run them in the mountains. And everybody would put their own notch in the pig's ear. One guy had a 1 notch in the right ear, one guy had a 1 notch in the left ear, one guy had a lower notch in the right, another guy had a upper notch in the left. You know what I'm saying? Everybody had their little signal. And so then in the fall, late in the fall,
just let them go.
Just let them go. Let them go. Now they would take them just enough corn
to come back to us.
To where they could keep them friendly. Keep them so they didn't get mixed up with Augusta Springs' pigs, okay? And so that's the way they ran them. And then around Thanksgiving they'd have a hog kill, and that's why Virginia became known as the ham capital of the world, was because we were one of the only climates in the Shenandoah Valley here that had that in the fall that had the temperatures. Typically in November, we will have 65 or 70 degree days and 30 degree nights as we go into winter. And that's what you need for meat to take a cure. You need it to be warm in the day and really cool at night, and it's got to get cool enough at night to take it through so the meat doesn't rot before it takes the cure, but it won't take the cure if it's real cold. See? So it was this, and that's the only reason why Virginia became the cured ham, Virginia ham capital of the world, was because of our climate. Nothing else. Not because of grain or genetics or everybody loved pigs. It was strictly because of the weather factor enabled a really good curing process. And so there were a lot of hogs grown here in the 20s and 30s and 40s before rural electrification and refrigeration came in and made the climatology part of it obsolete. Now, of course, you can have a big room with a special thermostat on it, and you can make the temperature fluctuate however you want to, and that's not an issue. And so forever I've been thinking, how can we get these pigs, how can we reutilize these forests now? Because the problem now being we've got to control these pigs. We can't just turn them loose. The Game Commission isn't going to want 100 pigs coming running around through their, game commission. That's not going to make them very happy, or the neighbors. And so how do we do this? And so the problem was cheap control. How do you have a control mechanism that you can run up through this rough ground and these, hills that you can hardly stand on, and do it cheaply and efficiently and controlled? And so it was literally an epiphany one night. I woke up from a dead sleep and had this idea of a nylon rope around the trees. And we started this 3 years ago, and it is fantastic. It solves all the problems. I mean, there are several things. One was we didn't want to have to put posts up through here. It's hard enough to walk up through here, let alone try to get up through here dragging some posts or a tractor or something. Number two was we didn't want to put any hardware in trees. If you want to lose your salvation at PolyFace, you just put a wire or a nail in a tree, and that's it. that's the unforgivable sin. All right, and so so we wanted a postless, tree hardwareless system, and so the nylon rope doesn't scar the tree. It can expand. It's got a lot of flex in it, and it's rot resistant, so it'll last for years. And it allows it allows play in the wire to move through the other little loop. So the first thing is to tie one loop around the tree, and then we tie another loop that becomes the insulator for the wire. And we can now go in. This is about a 5 acre field. We call them acorn glens. And we can do one of these. So you see we just zigzag it up through the trees using the trees, and we can do one of these glens in about less than a person hour per acre. What that does is produce at minimum 300, maximum 500 to 600. So if we just take the minimum and say $300 worth of feed through the hogs per acre per year, suddenly we look at our 450 acres and just discovered an extra $140,000 a year of annual income that we didn't have. Wow. Trampling and wolves and fire behind them and Indians or whatever. The single strand here because we don't put the pigs in here until they're close to finishing. And
what gauge is it? It's heavier.
This is 12.5 gauge aluminum tipper tie. And we love that stuff. Tipper tie, aluminum. Yeah, I don't get a commission, but it's aluminum rather than steel, so it can never rust. And it's half the weight of steel, so you don't have to put nearly as many posts in to maintain a nice taut wire. And of course, no brace. We just come up to the end and use a nylon rope around a tree with a white knob, and we're boom. You're done. Same thing with the gate. There's no post. Occasionally we have to put a stake because there's just not a tree, that you can work with. But very, very occasionally, I mean, in an average 5 acre glen here, we won't have more than a dozen of these rebar stakes to take care of special little places.